also hugged Oprah Winfrey, but anyway. One of my earliest memories of childhood is going to see my very first film inside a movie theatre. I was 3 years old. It was the summer holidays in Australia, and I went with my mum and my 2 older sisters to see The Never-Ending Story. And I should preface this by saying that I was obsessed with horses at the time. So you might remember the film, but there's that moment when the young boy, Atreyu, is walking his horse, Artax, through the swamp of sadness. And the idea behind this swamp is that if you are sad, you will sink into the mud and you will die. So there's a moment when, it still gets me, when Artax stops in his tracks and the horse starts to sink into the mud. And Atreyu is pulling on his bridle saying, "Come on, Artax, come on, you have to move, you have to move." And he doesn't, and the mud swallows him up and he dies. And little 3-year-old Alicia started screaming. I started crying and yelling, and I hid under my seat, and I made so much noise, my mum had to take me out of the theatre. So it was a pretty traumatic start to what has now become a lifelong love of watching movies and a career talking about movies as a film reporter. But it taught me from a very young age that movies can be powerful. And we all have these stories of, not being able to sleep after seeing a scary movie, or crying during a romance, or wanting to take action after seeing a documentary. And movies are powerful because they tell stories. Storytelling is one of the most human things that we do. Stories can connect us, they can divide us, they can create empathy, they can incite hate. And film is a very powerful medium to see these stories because you watch them on screens that feel larger than life, surrounded by sound and sitting next to a stranger in the dark who might laugh and cry and jump at the same time as you. And I love how you can go to see a movie with a friend and you can both walk out with a completely different opinion and experience of seeing that movie. And films are also a way of preserving history and exporting culture. Me being here in this high school, I got really excited because I felt like I was in an American teen movie. I was walking down the hallways going, I'm in the Breakfast Club right now, this is so cool. Because so much of what I learnt about America before I moved here was from watching movies. But right now, what we are learning from, what we're exporting out into the world and what we're seeing are stories that are overwhelmingly told from just one perspective. You may have heard about the statistics of female filmmakers working in Hollywood. On average, out of the 100 highest grossing films per year, 96% are directed by men and 4% by women. And that's despite film school graduates having a ratio of about 50% men and 50% women. These statistics have not changed in many years, and in 1975 there was a film theorist who coined the term male gaze to talk about what happens when you see art, popular culture and film through the lens of just one gender. How does that shape our experiences of the world or our opinions of ourselves or each other? And people may say, well, it's entertainment, it's movies, it's just good fun, but there are so many research studies which link things like body image and self-esteem to what we see on the screens, particularly in children. Gina Davis says for young girls watching entertainment, if they can see it, they can be it. Representation matters, and the way characters are portrayed on screen or sometimes completely erased from stories has a huge impact on us as viewers. And studies show that with more female directors come more female characters, better representation of women on screen, and also more women working in production roles. So I've been doing a lot of research into why there are so few filmmakers working in Hollywood, and of course it's a very complex issue, but a lot of it has to do with the very idea of who a director is. I bet if right now, if I asked you to picture a movie director, you'll probably think of a man. Maybe it's someone specific, or maybe you're like me and you think of the guy with the pants that go out like that, sitting on the film set. I don't know, that's just me. But if you Google the term film director, Google comes up with 51 options of who you might be talking about, and 50 of them are men. One is a woman. That one woman is Catherine Bigelow, who's also the only female filmmaker to win the Best Directing Oscar in the 89 years of the Academy Awards. And these 50 men are brilliant. I mean, they're talented and they're visionary directors. People like Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, Alfred Hitchcock, Stanley Kubrick, the people who directed some of my favorite movies of all time. But the fact of the matter is that men just get more of an opportunity to direct than women. Because when it comes to becoming a filmmaker, your career path might look a little something like this. You start out by making a short film, an independent movie, where you pour your own money, you beg, borrow, and steal, and you put blood, sweat, and tears into making your film. It's not easy, but it shows what you can do as a director and what kinds of stories you might like to tell. Then you can go to production companies or outside financiers and ask for money, bigger budgets that you don't have to put your own money into. Then you can go to movie studios and pitch to be part of their projects or to make your own bigger budget. You can also go and get an agent who start to pitch you out for jobs as well. When movie studios are looking for directors, they go to these agencies and they ask for a list of possible candidates, people with relevant experience at working at that budget level. Overwhelmingly, the names that they get back are male, and that's not because anyone is inherently sexist or trying to keep women out. It's just that they don't have the relevant experience because research shows women rarely make it past that independent film stage. Because they can put their own money into making movies, but once they have to go outside and ask for money or to be part of the Hollywood system, they struggle because that very idea of who a director is a man. And it's still seen as more of a risk to give money to women filmmakers to make their movies than it is to men. They say that, men are hired and promoted on potential, women are hired and promoted on proof. But how do you even get that proof when your very gender makes it seem like you are a risk for the job? And people say to me, well, it's Hollywood, it's a boys' club, it always has been, it always will be. And that's when I like to show them images of the very first filmmakers in Hollywood, which helps to change their idea of what a director looks like. So this is what a director looks like. This is Alice Guy Blaché. She was the first female filmmaker in the world and also one of the first movie directors in cinema history. Because in the late 1890s, at the start of cinema, right up to the 1920s, there were more female filmmakers working in Hollywood than there is today. So that means before women could even vote, they had better positions in Hollywood. Alice was a secretary at a photography company. She asked her boss one day if she could borrow one of his newfangled motion picture cameras, and she ended up creating one of the first movies to ever tell a story. That's it on the left. It was a short film called The Cabbage Fairy. She made over 1,000 movies in her time, and she was the first woman to set up and run a movie studio. She also experimented with colour at a very early time, and she also encouraged her actors to a more realistic acting style. This is also what a director looks like. This is Lois Weber, and I love this picture of her on the left, sitting on set looking so happy. She's got her megaphone with her name on it. Lois was a director, writer, actress, and producer, and in 1916 she had the highest grossing film in America, and it was a short film about abortion. She was one of the first directors to ever realize the power of movies to talk about real issues, and she particularly spoke about issues which affect women. She also pushed forward the idea of visual imagery on screen. This is a shot from her 1913 film called Suspense, and for the first time, someone used 3 different images superimposed at once. You've got the man breaking into the house on the left, you've got the woman inside, trapped inside, calling a husband on the right, and the husband in the middle getting that distressing phone call. And this was used to heighten tension. Alice and Lois are just 2 examples of the many female filmmakers that were working during the early stages of Hollywood, but as the 1920s rolled on and the Great Depression came, women started to be phased out. And a lot of that has to do with money, because movies all of a sudden had to make a profit, banks came in to finance movies, Hollywood started to be run as a business and executives were put in charge, and women at the time weren't thought of as being executive-minded or able to run a business or able to cope with large amounts of money. In 1930s Hollywood, there was one female filmmaker left working. Her name was Dorothy Oz. And this is what a director looks like, and I love Dorothy. She was a badass. She wore suits, she made commercial hits which had feminist overtones. The movie on the left is called Dance Girl Dance, and it's a pretty scathing look about how women can be used as objects in entertainment. You've got Katharine Hepburn up the top playing a female aviator in Christopher Strong, and down the bottom, The Wild Party. That was where Dorothy invented the boom microphone. Because at the very beginning of sound, you had these large microphones. They had to be hidden in costumes or in furniture, and it restricted how much an actor could move. Dorothy had the great idea of putting a microphone on a fishing rod and then holding it above the actors, and boom, the boom microphone was born. She was also the first woman to be inducted into the Directors Guild of America, and she taught at UCLA, where she mentored a young filmmaker called Francis Ford Coppola, who went on to direct the Godfather series. So the idea of what a director looks like wasn't always male, and the stories weren't just told from one perspective. And if this happened back then, there is no reason why we can't go back to this now. It's been proven time and time again that movies made by women, starring women, for women, make money at the box office. It's just about changing that old thinking. The good news is there are many men and women working inside Hollywood to try to open more doors to female filmmakers and change this. But the better news is that we can all play our part to make a change. Hollywood is a business where the customers, and they tell me here in America that customer is always right. So that means we can change things. When you buy a movie ticket, you can think about what you're putting your money towards. If you want to see more female filmmakers, you can support their movies by going to watch them at the multiplex or in the art house theatre or at home on video on demand. You can also help to change the idea of what a director looks like by sharing images from the past, such as these, or women working today, like Ava DuVernay. And the biggest thing you can do is just use that device in your pocket. We've seen so many times examples of everyday people who speak directly to companies on social media and change things completely. I mean, just recently, the fun example was the guy who asked for the chicken nuggets from Wendy's, and then he ended up getting so many retweets that he got it. But if you want to see a change in Hollywood, you can critique what you see on screen, the kinds of stories you want to see, and who you want to tell the stories. Because whether you are a super film geek like me or just a casual film goer, what we see on screens affect us all in ways that we might not even know about. I get so excited by thinking what movies might look like if more than just a section of the population were able to share their story. Even if the stories remain the same, the experience would be different because it's filtered through different perspectives. Every person deserves a chance to share their story on a screen as large as life and influential scale that gets exported out into the world. So let's try and help make that happen. Thank you.